Are you an INFJ or an INFP? Stick around to find out. INFJs and INFPs have a lot in common. They're both introverts, they're both intuitives, they're both feelers. They love to learn, they love to be creative, to express themselves, they love to help other people, they need to be authentic. There's so much that they share in common, it can be really difficult to tell the difference between the two. Further complicating matters, most people are only familiar with and consider the 8 preferences: extroversion and introversion, sensing and intuition, thinking and feeling, and judging and perceiving. But underlying each and every personality type, there are actually 4 cognitive functions, 4 mindsets that cause each and every personality to do what he or she does. So we're going to take a look at the 4 cognitive functions that drive the INFJ and the 4 that drive the INFP and compare the two, as well as some other observations to help tell the difference. The INFJ personality type is comprised of introverted intuition, extroverted feeling, introverted thinking, and extroverted sensing, whereas the INFP personality type is comprised of introverted feeling, extroverted intuition, introverted sensing, and extroverted thinking. Let's start by comparing the 2 different types of intuition that the personalities use. The INFJ uses introverted intuition, whereas the INFP uses extroverted intuition. Now, they both are intuitive, so they enjoy theories, patterns, understanding the big picture, putting things together. But introverted intuition tends to take a bunch of ideas and boil it down to 1 or 2. And this is more of an introverted process. So while every personality type can do everything and uses all the functions and all the preferences, on some level, INFJs are really good at working by themselves to boil things down to what they think is the most essential answer, or probably the one. Whereas extroverted intuition, which the INFP uses, tends to multiply options and happens generally in a group. Now, it can be an individual thing again, but they enjoy being with others and coming up with a variety of ideas and just multiplying the ideas. So the INFJ, boils things down to one idea or a couple ideas which seem to be best, or an answer or solution which is probably the best, whereas the INFP is multiplying them and coming up with more and more and more of them. The intuition is the way that the INFJ and the INFP gather information, but what about the primary way that they make decisions? Both of these personality types are feelers. The INFJ is an extroverted feeler, whereas the INFP is an introverted feeler. Feelers, the personality types that use feeling as their primary decision-making function, are generally concerned with the happiness of the people around them, so much so that their own personal happiness is bound up in the happiness of others. But this is particularly true of extroverted feeling, the decision-making function that the INFJ uses primarily. INFJs have a hard time being happy if the people close to them that they care about are not also happy. So they often let go of their personal preferences and even favorites in favor of making the people around them happy. In fact, I've even heard that some INFJs have a hard time identifying what their favorite things are. Do they even have favorite things, because they're so concerned with making other people happy? They've been called chameleons, and they often shapeshift to some extent to blend in with what other people care about. They can shift to talk in certain ways and to be concerned with what other people are concerned with to make that other person happy. All feelers really do care about making other people happy, but introverted feeling is strongly concerned with being true to its unique identity. So INFPs have a tendency to want to be truly unique and different from other people around them, more than they maybe care about making everybody else happy, although they do care about that. They also tend to stand up for the underdog and to champion the underdog. That's very common in FI users, introverted feeling users. So they will find the child, the animal that's overlooked and abused. They'll find anyone or any cause that they can really support where that person may not be able to stand up for himself or herself. And again, INFJs will do that as well, definitely. But that's particularly true of people who use introverted feeling. They tend to gravitate toward the underdog. Now, here's a main difference that I've observed. And again, all personality types, especially the INFJ and INFP, are going to do some at different times. But if you look at the introverted intuition, which the INFJ has, that we looked at first when we compared the introverted intuition that the INFJ has with the extroverted intuition the INFP has, and you compare that introverted intuition to the introverted feeling that the INFP has, what you're going to see is kind of a difference in seriousness. The INFJ, and again, everybody does everything. There's times when the INFJ will be playful and fun for sure, and that plays in with some of the other cognitive functions we'll look at later. And there are times that the INFP is going to be serious for sure. But what I've seen in general is in the INFJ, there's more of a seriousness at heart that take the world and treat it like it's a really big deal. Like everything the INFJ does has to be serious to some extent for the most part. Life is a serious matter. Whereas the INFP takes a more playful, fun-loving approach to life. Down deep at the heart, FI users are playful children. They just can't deny it. I know even people that aren't dominant introverted feelers like the INFP, they still have this playfulness at heart that I, as an INFJ, have never really been able to imitate on a regular basis all the time. There's a seriousness that undergirds the INFJ personality type. So that's a main difference I've observed, because now we're comparing the dominant functions, the main driving cognitive functions, the one that the INFJ uses, which is introverted intuition, the serious one, versus the one that the INFP uses mainly, which is introverted feeling. And that's, again, what really makes each of these personalities unique, because the dominant cognitive function plays more of a driving role in each of these personalities than any other function. Let's look now at the other decision-making function that both of these personality types use. Introverted thinking, which the INFJ uses, and extroverted thinking, which the INFP uses. Introverted thinking, which the INFJ uses, is generally concerned with organizing systematically and making sense of a large body of knowledge. It's also concerned with efficiency, not wasting any time or energy, but trying to get things done as easily and effectively as possible. Introverted thinking makes INFJs philosophical to some level. They really are concerned with why the world works the way it does and why it matters. They want to understand why things are the way they are. And I would be remiss if I didn't point out that the introverted intuition, which is the INFJ's dominant function, paired up with the introverted thinking, the tertiary function, makes INFJs great at identification. They love to go through a dichotomous key. When I was a little kid, all I read for some time was reptile and amphibian books, because I loved to figure out what made a difference between a frog and a toad, for instance, or what made a lizard and a snake different. I like to go through the dichotomous key. Okay, does it have eyelids? Does it have legs? Does it live in land, or does it live on the water? Does it have a shell? I just enjoyed going through that. And later on, that showed up in identifying different personality types, which many INFJs are really good at, because they're great at logically classifying and organizing information quickly and efficiently, using that intuition and introverted thinking together. And they tend to use it to help people because of that extroverted feeling component that drives them to use it to the benefit of people. So they love personality types, whether it's Myers-Briggs, it's DISC, or Enneagram. And I should say again that INFPs enjoy that and often are good at that too, because they'll use that in their stories or in their creative ventures. But INFJs love to classify things and are really good at it because of this introverted thinking. Extroverted thinking, by contrast, is concerned with getting things done in the world and doing that quickly and efficiently and making big changes, often with other people. And it's a very concrete, practical function. Now, extroverted thinking can also come across as terse, direct, or even rude at times, because it's more concerned with getting things done in the world than it is with protecting and caring for other people's feelings. And this is really weird, because when I think of INFPs and other people think of INFPs, you think of them often as some of the most sensitive, considerate, thoughtful, tenderhearted people out there. But if you ever come across an INFP who's under a lot of stress, that extroverted thinking might show up, and they might talk more directly, even rudely, than you'd ever imagine. And that's a big sign that they're under stress. That doesn't mean that everybody who uses extroverted thinking is rude. It's just that INFPs use it as their inferior function, their fourth function. So they're not very good at using it, unlike, introverted feeling, which is their dominant function, and they're exceptional at using. So that's a big sign and a big difference between the INFJ and the INFP. By contrast, the introverted thinking that the INFJ uses is probably a function that the INFJ is a little bit more comfortable with, especially as time goes by. Because it's also an introverted function, so that INFJ is going to be bent toward doing things in an introverted way, and using the introverted intuition to collect the information and the introverted thinking to systematically organize it, or even to direct the type of information that the INFJ is interested in. Again, that introverted thinking causes the INFJ to be bent toward or interested in the philosophical matters of life and organizing mass bodies of information, and to take it and to put it into an organized, logical, big picture whole. That all feeds together when you think about INFJs. The last two functions we'll compare are extroverted sensing and introverted sensing. The INFJ uses extroverted sensing, and extroverted sensing can make personality types really good at observing the world around them, especially nature. They're very in the moment. Extroverted sensing is a present in the moment function that makes people alert as to gathering information around them. Unlike, which, both these personalities use, unlike the intuition, which makes people more future oriented. But the extroverted sensing is really good at observing other things around them. So INFJs on some level may be drawn to nature and to checking animals out. Not everybody, but many of them are. Some really enjoy the stars. Some enjoy being out in the woods or walking by a stream. The fourth function, the inferior function, is often a way of relaxing. So going back to the extroverted thinking, that's the INFP's fourth function. They may really enjoy some kind of competition to help them relax. The INFJ, by contrast, probably just enjoys being outside in nature to relax. And again, every personality does a little bit of each, so there's some blend and crossover, but that's a big sign for the INFJ that they enjoy relaxing outside nature and they're pretty observant of other things. They don't want to do this all the time, but they do enjoy it on some level. And in fact, you'll find some INFJs who aspire to be park rangers or to work in the outdoor world, educating others because they really enjoy this function and it's a source of joy and relaxation to them. Introverted sensing, by contrast, is exceptional at getting into routines and patterns and doing the same thing over and over for a long period of time. It's really good with minute details, and you'll also see that it's great for the past. So I see this coming into play for INFPs in that they're really good at remembering particular details about people, especially when they tell stories. They're good storytellers, especially in writing when they can focus on using their creativity to craft an interesting story. You can see them pulling in observations they've made of other people and the characters that they're forming and coming up with, and they're masterful at this. You feel like you're seeing a real person because they're taking those details they've observed about real people using their introverted sensing and then applying it to what they write. Similarly to how we contrasted introverted thinking, which the INFJ uses, and extroverted thinking, which the INFP uses, and talked about how the INFJ uses introverted thinking as a tertiary function, whereas the INFP uses extroverted thinking as an inferior function. We're looking at the same sort of situation here with extroverted sensing and introverted sensing. The INFJ uses extroverted sensing as an inferior function. So while it can be a source of relaxation and joy, it can also be a sign of stress. So if you see an INFJ who's stressed, he or she may be sitting around just eating, relaxing, maybe watching TV, vegetating, just watching video after video of something fun. If you're stressed out, I know I do that sometimes when I'm stressed. I just sit and I'll watch like hours of basketball or fishing. Nothing productive. I'm just sitting there in the moment, wasting my time because I'm stressed out. That's what you will find an INFJ doing when he or she is really stressed. The INFP, by contrast, uses introverted sensing as a tertiary function, so they're a little more adept at using it. And this can make them those exceptional storytellers, whether they're writing it or they're just telling it in person. Something else I've observed about INFPs, which is interesting, is the kinds of clothes they wear. And again, same with INFJs. The extroverted sensing and the introverted sensing play into their tastes as far as how they decorate their houses and the types of things they wear and buy. The extroverted sensing that the INFJ uses is more concerned generally with nice things. Now, they don't have to have great stuff, but they generally do like high quality, new sort of things. Whereas the INFP wants a value, wants a deal. Introverted sensors love a deal. They want to save and scrimp and they don't want to waste and they reuse things. So you'll find in INFPs an interesting style where they'll have a very unique flavor and they might buy something, maybe from a consignment shop or on sale. I'm not saying they don't like nice new things because they'll buy new things too. Please don't mishear me on that because I don't want to offend you. But they'll often put together a really good looking, interesting wardrobe or set of dishes or decorations in the house that they've gotten from deals, maybe at like consignment shops or they got at garage sales or they got from here or there. I've been to an INFP's house. My friend's wife is an INFP, and she had a bunch of dishes and like none of them were the same. They were cool, but they didn't match at all and they weren't all in sync. Whereas that probably wouldn't be the case for the INFJ so much, but the INFP loves the deal. And again, it can play into the style and the uniqueness of what these people wear. So that's a big difference between the two. Now that I've talked about the introverted sensing and the extroverted thinking, which the INFP uses in that order respectively, let's talk a little bit about another sign that a person is an INFP. I mentioned extroverted thinking can be a sign that an INFP is stressed, and that when that person is really stressed, they'll use the extroverted thinking in an immature way and maybe lash out at somebody or be super direct in an inappropriate way. They don't use it as well as an ENTJ or ESTJ, who uses extroverted thinking as a dominant function. Because INFPs use it as an inferior function, it can show up when they're stressed. But an INFP, when he or she is stressed, maybe just a little less stressed, might default to going around the house and cleaning and tidying up and doing chores and organizing the physical world. Something that INFPs and generally INFJs aren't super excited about on the whole. But when stressed, that's something they'll default to. So they might have a project that is due very quickly that they're not excited about, something they need to get done like taxes or like a school project that they're not excited about. But that person will put it off to go and do the chores. And that's, again, a manifestation that the INFP is stressed. Lastly, as a bonus, let's take a look at the loops. Sometimes people talk about a loop where somebody gets caught in a cycle that's not necessarily good. And I have my thoughts about that. Sometimes these loops can be helpful if they're used in a positive way. But when you talk about the INFJ loop, introverted intuition and introverted thinking, all the energy is focused inwardly. And again, that can be good to some extent, but it's encouraged that at some point, whatever activity is happening inwardly is brought outward for the benefit of the INFJ and the benefit of others. But the introverted intuition, introverted thinking loop tends to be collecting and organizing and exploring philosophical information or some kind of research to no end. It's just a constant stream of research and gathering and collecting with no really direct application. For the INFP, their loop is introverted feeling and introverted sensing. And in that loop, they are stuck kind of doing the same thing over and over again, never trying anything new, which is not really good for the INFP because they thrive on doing something new. That's where that extroverted intuition and introverted feeling blend together. And they have this unique persona or identity that they've come up with, which is truly authentic and truly them, where they're trying new things and putting it together. Now, my mom is an ENFP. She's not an INFP, but I just remember looking back through photos and you could see that same extroverted intuition and introverted feeling with my mom. And like every year in a photo, she had some different style or a different look coming through. And that can be true for the INFP. They really feel like they're themselves when they're trying new, authentic, unique to them identities. But when they're stuck in that introverted feeling and introverted sensing loop, they're just doing the same thing over and over again and not trying anything new, which can be really bad. That's okay for an ISTJ. That's what an ISTJ does really well, the same thing over and over again. That's my dad. And he will eat the same breakfast cereal for 2 years in a row, and he'll be happy with that. But that's not good for an INFP. That's not the way INFPs should function, and that's when it can be a bad thing. Telling the difference between these two types can be challenging at first, but I encourage you to go back through the video and look at the differences between the two functions, primarily the dominant function, introverted intuition and introverted feeling, but see if you sync up with some of the interesting idiosyncrasies of each of the personality types. And I'd also encourage you to read about the functions. A lot of people think that the test defines who you are when you take the Myers-Briggs personality test, but I'm actually a certified Myers-Briggs practitioner, and I'm here to tell you the test doesn't tell you who you are. It helps you to get it in the ballpark. And what you really need to do is go and read about which personality type better matches you, or again, listen to the cognitive functions and think about which one matches you better. Don't use the test to tell, hey, that's who I am. No, it just helps you get close so you can figure out who you really are. Because in the end, you figure out, because you know yourself better, which one matches you the best. And speaking of that, there's really not a way to know yourself well without the passing of time. You just have to have some life experience. So if you don't get it right away, don't give up. Give yourself more time and think about it over time. That's the way for at least INFJs, a lot of things come together. You get the information, and over time, through experience, you start to put the pieces together so it fits into place. And that's probably true of the INFP to some extent as well. So just give yourself time and don't beat yourself up if you don't get it right away. Another great way to understand yourself better, especially if you know for sure you're an INFJ or if you're trying to tell the difference, is to grab a copy of my book, The INFJ Personality Guide, which is my free gift to you. In the book, you'll learn more about your preferences and cognitive functions and hear stories about what makes INFJs. And the book hopefully will help you understand yourself better, live a life of purpose, and just feel understood. It's my free gift to you again, and you can grab a copy of it by looking for the link in the description below. I hope this video served you and brought some clarity to what personality type you are. I know it can be difficult. At one point, I thought I was an INFP. I thought I was an ESFJ. I thought I was a bunch of things until I really understood that I was an INFJ and everything clicked. So take your time. But thank you for waiting and watching all the way to the end. I'll see you next time.